Hello, Atmore. It's the Lloyd and Friends show. And now here's your host, Lloyd Alderton.
All right, I'm talking with Mr. Phil Mack this morning. Is it Philip?
Philip is my given name, but I go by Phil.
We call him Phil. Phil Mack. Phil Mack is a native. His family is native to the area, and Phil has been living here for quite a few years. He's well, I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself, but he's an interesting guy. And Phil and I, we spent a lot of time in talking philosophical stuff, religious stuff, and all kinds of stuff. And I've always found him to be an interesting guy and a productive citizen here in Atmore. So I'm going to introduce you to him, of Phil Mack. Philip, tell us a little bit, just start at the beginning. Go back to how you come connected with Atmore.
Well, I was born in Pensacola. My family, I'm the third of four children. I have an older brother, an older sister, and then a younger sister. And my earliest memories, we lived in a little community out of Pensacola called Warrington, which is not too terrible far from the Navy base. And I can remember actually walking to school and crossing a 4-lane highway, and nobody thought a thing in the world about it. But back in those days, it didn't make any difference whose child you were. Parents looked out for children that were on the move. But I believe it was the very early 1960s, my dad moved us from Warrington, Florida to Farmington, Utah. Dad,
Okay, now stop right there just a second. Now, your dad was he military?
No, sir. He
wasn't.
Well, he served in the Army during World War II, so he was a veteran.
But he wasn't in Pensacola as military?
No, sir. He was actually working for Gulf Power Company as a lineman.
Okay.
And in an attempt to better his situation, he moved us to Farmington, Utah, where he took a job with, I believe it was Utah Power and Light, as a lineman. And Dad bounced us all over the country.
And what was in Utah?
A lineman's job.
A lineman's job.
And how he found
No
out. No
family or anything like that.
No, sir. We were on our own, basically. And how he found out about this job, I have no idea. You know, in today's world, you know, you go on the internet and find out where there's a lineman.
A little bit different
job.
then.
So how he actually found out about these jobs that he moved to, remains a mystery. I never even thought to ask him because, you know, as a child, you just, you know, if Mom and Dad say we're moving, you just pack up your little toys and you go. But we lived in Farmington, Utah for a period of time, and when we left Farmington, Utah, we moved to Southern California in the Palm Springs area, Cathedral City, actually. And Dad took a job as a lineman working for Southern California Edison. And we stayed there for a number of years, and he found a job in Tacoma, Washington for Tacoma Power and Light. It was a city-owned utility. And we only stayed in Tacoma for about a year, maybe a year and a half. And
what was he doing? Was he moving up for better money, or would he have just restless feet?
Well, I think it was a combination of restless feet and more money. But he didn't like Tacoma Power and Light after he got there. It was a city-owned utility, and their safety record was not really what it needed to be. And I very distinctly remember, I want to say I was in the 7th grade at that time, came home from school one day, and Dad was already home, and that was very unusual for us to come home from school and Dad not to be there. And he and
him to be there.
So for him to be home by the time we got home from school.
Yeah, okay.
But they had a fatality that day on the job, and I can remember hearing bits of the discussion between him and Mom, and he at that point he just made the decision, I can't continue to work here because I may be next. And so we moved back to the Southern California area, just north of San Diego, in a little, well, it's not really a little town, but it was Escondido, California. and he went to work for San Diego Gas and Electric. And that's where Dad basically finished his career as a lineman or working for utility companies. And so we kind of bounced around all over. We were always the new kids. Wherever we went, we were always the new kids. And I counted it up one time, and I think I had attended like 9 or 10 different schools by the time I had finally graduated. If I'm not greatly mistaken, I believe I am the only one of Mom and Dad's children that completed 4 consecutive years at the same high school. So I actually graduated from high school in Escondido, California.
Now, tell me your siblings real quick. How many did you have?
I've got an older brother named Wayne. He lives out in the Phoenix, Arizona area. I have an older sister, Kathy. She lives in Ivins, Utah. And then I have a younger sister, Fran, who lives in Yuma, Arizona. So we kind of followed in Dad's footsteps maybe and just scattered to the 4 winds.
Now, give me an age differential on the, how old are you now?
I'm 65 now.
And Wayne is older?
Wayne is 72. Kathy, I want to say Kathy is 68 or 69. And then my younger sister is 61. So we're, senior citizens, basically.
We're all senior citizens now, okay.
But after Dad retired from San Diego Gas and Electric, I had graduated high school, and he had decided that he wanted to come back to the deep South, to Granny and Grandpa's place.
He grew up here.
Yes,
Your dad did.
Yes, he was born in the Brat, Florida area. My mom was born in the McCullough area. But Dad decided that he wanted to move back to this part of the world and farm.
Now, before you move forward, tell me who they were. Your dad came from Brad. Who was his parents?
Who
were your dad's parents?
Robert and Dovey Mack.
They didn't call him Robert. They called him something else, didn't they?
Well, they called Grandpa Robert.
They did, okay.
But Dad is a Robert also, and they called him Bob all of his life.
Your dad was Bob, okay. And your mother, she was from McCullough.
She was Texana Andrews. Her mom was James and Ruth Andrews. Grandpa Andrews was well known in the area because he raised such good hunting dogs.
Okay.
And there were people who came from all over to get Grandpa to raise them and train them a hunting dog.
And she was a sister to Evelyn Andrews, who was Evelyn Kuhn.
Evelyn Kuhn, married to Ubi Kuhn.
Okay.
But anyway, when Dad retired, he decided he wanted to farm, and being freshly out of high school, he gave me the option. He says, you can either stay here in Southern California, and which I had a job. But he said, or you can come with us and help me get into farming. And on the advice of some people from church that I really trusted and valued their opinion, I went ahead and moved with Dad and Mom back to Brat, Florida. And Dad started farming Grandpa's land. And after about 3.5 years, he decided the farming life wasn't for him. He was not Green Acres compatible. And so he said that, he and Mom were going to move back out west. And in the meantime, I had met a young lady who was my future wife, and we got married, and Mom and Dad moved out west, and I stayed here, and the rest is kind of history from that point.
And who is that mysterious lady?
Well, she is Frances Arlene Steege. And I met Arlene, and we decided that she was the one for me, and she decided that I was the one for her. And
now, there was a little process to that, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was.
Would you get in trouble if you told that?
Well, no, it's kind of common knowledge, and we laugh about it today. But I actually met Arlene on a double date. I was on a date with another young lady, and a friend of mine from work, I told him, say, hey, you need to introduce me to some girls. And
you had just come back down here?
Yes, sir. We had just recently moved back, and he said, oh, yeah, well, I know a couple girls. Says a couple sisters. Says, well, I'll hook you up. And so actually I was on a date with Arlene's sister, and my friend was on a date with Arlene's as a double date, and so I can't even remember where we went or what we were doing, but I came to the conclusion real quickly that, hey, I got a lot more in common with Arlene than I do with her sister, and, seems to be a little bit more fun. And so anyhow, we started dating, and Arlene was never one to date exclusively.
Well, now tell me, I want to hear about the call to the house. That was the funny part. You called, and she said she turned you down or something, and you said,
"Oh yeah."
Well, in that case, let me talk to your sister, something like that.
Well,
that's the one I want to hear.
Yeah, well, I had called and asked her on a date one time, and she says, "Well, I'm busy." I said, "Well, let me talk to your sister then," and which at the time her sister also turned me down. But
okay.
But anyway, once we started dating, she was never one to date exclusively because she felt like that, hey, if you date exclusively, you limit your options. And I guess because I was a little different, being raised in the West, so to speak, there was some interest and attraction maybe there. And I was very persistent, and eventually she said, well, the only way I'm going to get rid of him is to marry him, I guess. And so we decided that we'd get married, and we got married at her dad's house, and have been married ever since. We've been exclusive for 45 years, been married for 43 years, because she was going to junior college, and she had asked, let's wait until I get out of junior college to get married. So I waited for her for 2 years to finish junior college, and then we got married. So.
Okay. You think you're going to? You think it's going to work out?
Well, if it doesn't, we've wasted an awful lot of time trying to figure it out. But yes, sir, I believe it's going to work out just fine.
Okay.
So
now, Phil, you're retired now.
Yes, sir. I retired from Alabama Power Company. I was a lineman I was in the line crew for probably 23 and a half of my 28 and a half years. Excuse me. I've actually finished my career in a warehouse location. Line work had gotten to the point to where it was a little bit more physically demanding than what I needed to be doing, and I had an opportunity to actually better myself by moving to the warehouse location. And so I finished my career in a warehouse, and that was about as different from line crew work as
that line crew work's got to be tough.
Well, people, when they look at a
climbing those poles, do you still climb those poles?
Well, yes, sir. Up until the time I left the crew, I was subject to climb poles on a daily or a regular basis if as needed. But the big difference was the warehouse work was a lot more technical. There was a lot more technology involved. I was forced to learn how to operate a computer when I was in the warehouse. But a lot of people, when they look at a big utility company, they say, man, they got all this great equipment, all these big trucks, all this kind of stuff. That that should be a breeze. But the reality is that all of the material that we handle is, heavy, bulky, awkward, and there's still a lot of just manual grunt labor involved in the construction and building of a pole line. You got to pull the wire out, you got to hang the wire, you got to get the wire tight, sag it up, and there's a lot of physicality involved there, and which a lot of that has been alleviated by the equipment, but still you got to handle that stuff. So I was grateful for the opportunity to be able to finish my career in something that was not quite as physically demanding. And quite frankly, had I not been having to do a lot of computer and technical type stuff, I might have extended my career a little bit, but whenever you put me in front of a computer, I'm kind of lost.
I understand, totally.
But I'm more intimidated by technology than I am awed by it.
And tell us about your family. You have how many children?
Got 3 children. Our oldest son, Wesley, he lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Our youngest son, Daniel, lives in Marshalltown, Iowa. And then our middle son, Russell, died about 23 years ago.
Okay.
And we still miss him, but, it's we have the hope that we will be together again. But that's our family situation. Have 6 grandchildren. My oldest son has 3 older teenagers, and my youngest son has 3 under the age of 10. So it's a lot of fun when we're able to get together.
Well, Phil, it's my understanding, I've heard this rumor about you, that you were actually personal friends with a fairly famous person, Mr. Claus, Santa. It's you. They tell me you actually know him.
Well, yes, and without...
Is he real?
Oh, absolutely. He's very real. And without despoiling any young people who may be listening's illusions, in 2012, I've worn a beard for a number of years in one shape or another, and which you couldn't tell it now. But in 2012, when my beard finally went completely white, my wife and I decided, well, let's have some fun with this. And so she found us a relatively inexpensive Santa Claus suit and a Mrs. Claus dress. And so we would, portray Santa and Mrs. Claus during the holidays, and just had a tremendous amount of fun with it. And after a year or so of that, we realized, well, if we're going to continue to do this and have fun the way, because it's a lot of fun, we need to invest in some better quality outfits. And so we, my wife, she found us on the internet a couple of, pretty nice quality.
You upgraded,
upgraded our costumes. And we try to do that every year. Just we go about and just try to spread cheer, just bring a smile to people's face. We let people know up front, hey, it's not about Santa Claus. The reason for this season is the Savior Jesus Christ. But, our goal is to just, make people smile and bring a little joy into their lives, and, maybe for just a moment forget whatever troubles or ails they may have. So yes, I know Santa Claus very well.
Well, I know up there at the North Pole, it's good. He can't just flip down here, with the drop of a hat. He has to have somebody to represent him. And you've done a good job with that. How long have you been doing this?
Since 2012.
2012.
Yes,
okay.
sir. So
and you do corporate parties or just church? What kind of gigs do you do?
Well, it started out as what I like to call random Santa. My wife and I would get dressed up, and we would just,
walk down the street.
We'd walk down the street. We'd go grocery shopping. We would, just, because places where you don't ordinarily expect to see Santa Claus. And one of my favorite things is to get on my bicycle and ride around town dressed as Santa Claus. One-man parade.
Look, Mommy.
Yeah, quite. But as far as doing parties and such, we don't really do a whole lot of that. We will go to like the Perdita School here just outside of town. They have an event they call Breakfast with Santa. It's a fundraising thing for their library or for whatever needs the school may have. And so they've invited us for several years to come on the day that they do this. And we go, and people will buy a breakfast from them to support the fundraiser. And then we'll make pictures with whoever comes and would like to make pictures. The thing that we chose not to do was we don't charge anybody to make a picture with us. And if we go someplace where they do charge, we try to avoid those type gatherings, because if you start putting a dollar figure on a picture with Santa Claus, eventually you're going to find folks that are not going to have Santa pictures with children or grandchildren because they can't afford it. So everything we do is free of charge. And occasionally people will, press money on you, and if they want to make a donation, that's fine. We do not encourage that. But what we do with all the donations that we receive is at the end of the season, we'll tally everything up, and then we will match whatever we have received, and that includes cash or gift cards or anything like that. And we make a donation to the Shriners Transportation Fund out of the Shrine Temple in Mobile. The Shriners are an excellent organization, and we want to support them. They actually helped us when our oldest son had spinal surgery. So we know that, whenever you donate to the Shriners, that 100% of the money that you donate is going to go towards what you donate it for. And the transportation fund is set up to help shuttle people who are in need back and forth between Mobile and the Shriners hospitals where their child is being seen. So, but that's kind of the way we do things. Before COVID, excuse me, before COVID, there was one year we had like, I want to say it was like 33 or 34 appointments set up where we went and did some kind of Santa Claus type thing, and that does not include the times that we would just do the random Santa thing and just dress up and go and surprise people. But it's
turned into almost a career, hasn't it?
Well, it's a for the I try not to break Santa Claus out until after Thanksgiving. You don't want to bring him too early because everybody looks at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and the Grand Marshal is always Santa Claus, and that's kind of
now your beard is it's not fake beard, is it?
No,
it's a real beard.
It's not fake, and I'll usually keep it trimmed pretty close until about the end of April, 1st of May.
All right, that's what I was going to ask you. How long does it take to grow that?
Well,
that beard.
If I start at the end of April, 1st of May, it's full enough that it looks like, hey, this is Santa Claus, but it's not so full that looks like homeless Santa Claus, if you will. And
now the hair on your head too. Now right now you got the skinhead look. You're starting over or something. But normally Santa has longer hair.
Well,
so you grow it down.
I did that a couple of times, and that's I can't do that anymore. It's just too aggravating to have longer hair. So I usually will keep my hair shorter and just tucked up under my Santa hat.
Okay.
But and believe it or not, and I know there's a lot of men who would disagree, but when your beard gets out there to the point to where you can see it in your peripheral vision, it's really kind of aggravating. It's a little difficult to, you always are aware of, I need to keep my beard clean. I need to, when you eat at a restaurant, I can't eat a hamburger in public without a knife and a fork. Excuse me again. But it's a very great relief whenever our last Santa appointment has been made at Christmas time, so that I can go ahead and cut everything back and give my...
those long beards. I always wondered about that. I've worn a beard, a little beard. What do you call that? A goatee or a little, kind of like what you have now.
Yes, sir.
Through the years, off and on. Although my wife says she would have never married me if I'd have had a beard. She doesn't. She doesn't go that. What's the word? She don't roll that way. But I've wondered. I see guys with those long beards. Back in let's see, this was 1970 or 71. When I was in the service, the year that I was in Vietnam. When I came back from Vietnam, I came back by ship, and during that year. There was a, what do they call the guy that's head of the Navy? He's the Admiral, Chief of Naval CNO, I think.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, he liberalized the Navy, and they could have beards. The Navy was always, like us Marines, clean-shaven, close hair. He liberalized the Navy, and when I got on that ship to come back home from Vietnam, all the Navy guys were trying on this new liberal policy, and I couldn't believe it. They had they looked like a hippie colony, or like I was downtown with bums or something. I mean, long beards and long hair, and I thought we'd stopped and picked up a colony of some people. We're helping them out, but they changed that. That didn't work out too well.
No, I can see why.
I think the Navy went back to a fairly clean cut look anymore. Now, Phil, I want to go back just a little bit to your. There's a couple of things that maybe we could delve into. Well, let's talk about your wife for a minute. A lot of people know Arlene. Arlene works out at PCI. She
Yes, sir.
writes grants out there, or at least she did.
Yes, that's her job. Is
she
grants
still
and
does that
contracts.
out
She
there.
works on what they call the nonprofit side of the PCI enterprises.
Okay.
She's never worked on the for-profit side. She started out in their health department and has moved through several different positions, and then she ended up in grants and contracts. And
she's been out there quite a few years now.
she's been out there close to 36 years.
36 years, wow.
She has had a finger in a lot of the pies that Porch Creek has developed over the years. And when I say that, I mean she has helped to acquire funding and helped to implement programs that are ongoing. And she's I don't want to sound like I'm bragging on her, but I'm bragging on her.
Go ahead. She's your wife.
She's very good at what she does. And especially with grants and contracts, you've heard that the devil is in the details. Well, in grants and contracts, it really and truly is. Whenever a grant is submitted, the people that review those, they basically look to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And, you can't leave any stone unturned as far as your research and all that. And because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the people that are going to be detail-oriented enough to submit a grant that meets all the criteria, because then they know that it will be administered the way that they need it to be administered. And she's good at that and enjoys it.
Now, Phil, I've noticed through recent years you always have that beautiful blue Harley Davidson motorcycle. You've had some experiences with that, have you not?
Yeah, I for the first time in a number of years, I am now motorcyclist. Or cycle less. I recently sold my.
You sold your bike?
Yes, sir. I finally sold it, and my reflexes had gotten too slow. My coordination is not what it really needs to be, and so I just decided that it would be better suited for somebody who was more able. But yes, sir, I've had a number of adventures, if you will. Probably the most memorable is one year I decided that I would ride out from Atmore to see my oldest son in Phoenix, Arizona. And I made a road trip just about a week or two before Thanksgiving the year that I went out there. And I want to say that was 2008 or I can't really remember, but it was in the middle 2000s. And little did I know that when I started my trip from Atmore, Alabama, that there was a weather front moving from west to east that brought like world record rains to the state of Texas.
You forgot to check the weather.
Well, I forgot to check the weather. But the reality is when you make a trip that long on motorcycle, you're going to run into some weather somewhere. But I basically ended up riding from Houston, Texas to Lordsburg, New Mexico over the course of 2 days in a driving rainstorm. And it was... I got a lot of strange looks from people, particularly whenever they found out the length of the trip that I had planned. But it was a lot of fun, and I had said many times that I would undertake another trip like that in a heartbeat, but I just didn't want to try to do it alone because it was really tough. Nobody to talk to when you stop to get gas, nobody to no backup, if you will, in case you have an issue or a problem. And so I would have done it again if I could have had, 2 or 3 to go with me.
Now, was it? I know a lot of you biker guys. I rode a bike some myself earlier on. Never took a trip like that, but my brother Philip rides bikes. He takes those trips. Was it you that told me a story about taking a shortcut across the grass?
Well, it was actually on that same trip. I was just outside of Kerrville, Texas, and I had been in and out of my rain suit because I don't care what anybody says. There's no such thing as a comfortable rain suit when you're riding a motorcycle. But I had taken my rain suit off at a gas stop, and as I was heading west, I was outside of Kerrville, Texas, and I said, well, I'm starting to see a lot of the traffic, coming to meet me, the eastbound traffic with windshield wipers on, so I know there's rain up ahead. And rather than try to change or put my rain suit on the shoulder of the interstate, I said, well, I'm going to get off at the next exit and just, pull up to the top of the exit, and I'll put my rain suit on. So I'm in the right-hand lane, and I'm running along there about 65 miles an hour. And when I take this exit, little did I know that some highway engineer had decided that about 100 yards off the edge of the interstate, they would put a 45-degree turn in that off-ramp. And I'm running, 50 miles an hour, and the roads are slick and wet. And I said, well, there's no way you're not going to make it. And so what I decided to do was, rather than try to slam on brakes and possibly, go into a bad, uncontrollable skid, I said, well, I'm just going to straighten this corner out, and I'll just go across the grass and ride up the hill and get on the access road. But again, those world record rains in Texas, it looked like I was on a motocross bike with a rooster tail of dirt and mud out behind me. And I had gotten to within about 3 feet of the road, and the ditch bank kind of took a little upward turn, and I ran out of momentum. And whenever I put my feet down, it was so wet and sloppy that naturally my feet didn't stay planted, and so I plunked over onto the side. Switched the bike off. I finally got it stood up, and looked like a mud man by the time I had done that. And had it not been for a good Samaritan guy that stopped and said, hey, buddy, can I help you? I'd probably still be stuck there on the shoulder of the road. But he helped me get pushed up onto the shoulder of the road, and so I thanked him and offered to pay him, and no, I'm good to go, and he left. So as I'm looking at the bike to make sure there's no damage,
Must have been a mess.
oh, it was mud from one end to the other, but and I was muddy from one end to the other, and so I said, well, no damage. Let me go ahead and get my rain suit on, and I'll be on my way. And about the time I got my rain suit on and was getting ready to go, there was a Texas state trooper that pulled up behind me, and behind him was a Kerr County deputy sheriff. And the state trooper was, I guess, investigating. Well, what he told me was, we got a report of a motorcycle crash at this exit. And I said, well, I guess that's me. And the whole time I was talking to the state trooper, the deputy sheriff was walking around my bike just looking. And as I explained what happened to the trooper, I said, well, you can see the marks. I said, I did not realize that sharp turn was on the off-ramp, and I was carrying too much speed. And I said, well, I'll just straighten it out. And, it was pretty obvious what had happened. But as I was explaining to him, like I say, that deputy was walking around and around, and when he saw the Alabama license plate, he, come over and he said, well, where are you headed? And I said, well, my ultimate destination will be Phoenix, Arizona, but I have some family in Yuma as well. And he said, man, that's fantastic. He said, me and some of my buddies, we just got off of about a 4,000-mile circuit of the country, the lower 48. And the relief I felt that I was talking to another biker was just overwhelming. And so we stood and talked about motorcycling and this, that, and the other. And the state trooper kind of took, backstage to our conversation. And as things started to wind down, I asked him, I said, well, how far up the road do I need to go before I can, find a place to stay for the night? Because it was getting late in the day by that point. And the deputy says, well, if you go to the second exit from where we are right now, there's a hotel, and he called the name of the hotel, and I can't remember the name of it. But he says, if you will stay there, said they will actually let you park your bike in a way that they can keep an eye on it with their surveillance cameras. And so I said, oh, man, that's fantastic. And so that's what I was preparing to do. And as I was getting ready to leave, as we were, saying our goodbyes, if you will, and I thanked them for checking on me, just about the time I got ready to leave, the ambulance pulls up behind the 2 police cars. So it was a very interesting hour there on the side of the interstate.
Well, What about getting your bike cleaned up? Did you have to hose it off or somewhere along the line?
Well, it was raining hard enough by the time I got to the hotel that it was
It
was pretty well hosed off.
So the whole time y'all were standing there beside the road talking, it was pouring down rain.
Well, it wasn't really pouring. It was beginning to
I
rain.
see. Okay.
And by the time we got ready to part ways, it had started to rain hard enough that everybody was ready to be out of it. The hardest thing I had to do was, once I got into the hotel, was to clean my leather up. And whoever the maid was in my room was probably not thrilled. I tried not to leave a big mess, but I had to wash my leathers off in the tub and hung them up near the heating vent so that they could dry for the next day. But that was just a fun time. That, again, had I had some companions along on the trip, it would have not been nearly as bad of a thing. But
so you prefer to ride with groups rather than?
I would prefer to ride with a smaller group. I've been on a lot of these big benefit rides for whatever, and you want to support the people that have a need and all like that. But whenever you get beyond about 5 or 6 motorcycles in a group, you have what I call the accordion effect. There's always somebody faster and somebody slower, and you're constantly, spreading out and bunching up, spreading out and bunching up. And the bigger the group is, the worse that becomes. And it was always my experience that whenever I rode with a very large group, like for a benefit ride, that I always ended up next to the guy who wanted to run 900 miles an hour, or the guy who didn't want to run. So whenever I would try to support those type of activities, I would make it a point to always be at the tail end of the line. So however fast they wanted to ride, they could ride. I knew where we were going, and I'd get there eventually. So as I would ride with friends, 4 or 5 bikes, that was about all that we would ever have with us.
Now, you rode a Harley.
Yes, sir, I rode a Harley.
Did you have any other bikes? Have you had other bikes other than Harley?
The very first motorcycle that I ever owned, it was a Suzuki, and they called it a TS, which was trail and street. It was a street legal dirt bike, if you will. It wasn't very big. My dad, he said, you'll never have a motorcycle while you're under my roof until you turn 21 and can pay for it yourself. So when I turned 21, I got a motorcycle, and it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. And I've had various other motorcycles over the years. Probably the very fastest bike I ever had was a Honda V65 Magna, and it would run so fast it would scare you, which, naturally you're going to try it. And but I graduated, if you will, to Harleys, and the reason that I stayed with Harley was not because of any brand loyalty, but because Harleys traditionally hold their value much better than the metric bikes. Ordinarily when I get something, I keep it until it just won't go, and then I just junk it. But the 2 Harleys that I have actually sold, I'm not going to say I made money, but I didn't lose as much as I would have had I been riding a metric type bike. So,
what about the handling of a Harley? Most people that ride Harleys or they ride BMWs, they swear by that. There's a reason why they ride that bike. Other than holding value, did you like the Harley compared to others you've ridden, or did you think it was?
Well, as far as the handling goes, I'm not really motorcycle savvy to the point to where I can say that there's a tremendous difference between a metric bike and a Harley. From a comfort standpoint, Harleys, or at least the ones that I had, were a little more comfortable. But again, and I'll tell you this, and anybody who disputes it, they can just dispute it if they want to. Whenever you ride for 8 or 10 hours at a time,
they all hurt.
There's no such thing as a comfortable motorcycle. You will be searching for creative ways to sit on that thing so that you can relieve pressure points and, get the blood flow going back. But Harley was a choice based on resale, if you will, for me. Not necessarily because of performance or handling or anything.
Well, they are a beautiful bike.
Well, they are whenever you keep them clean, but like anything else, if you don't keep it clean, it's not worth anything.
let's see. I have a note here I have to read. Give me a second.
Just wait.
Okay. Now he's Santa Claus. He's Easy Rider. This guy's a mixture of stuff. Phil, what else? What else do you do? What do you do for hobbies?
I don't really have what you would consider a classic hobby, if you will. Since I have retired, I have undertaken more home projects than I would have ever, because it's wonderful to be retired whenever you're doing projects at home, because you don't have the time constraint of, can I finish this project in the weekend? So I've undertaken a lot of home projects, just, nothing structural or anything like that, no home improvement type stuff. But, I built a picnic table. I built what I call a cooking table for whenever we cook fish outside. My own creative design with a spot for the cooker, and then a prep table, and then the food is done aside, and things like that. But I've managed to stay pretty busy.
Is that you like doing carpentry, stuff like that?
I like it up to the point that it gets to, like, I don't do finished carpentry of any kind. And for lack of a better way of putting it, anybody who's familiar with the TV show The Simpsons, and I think everybody is, there was an episode of The Simpsons where Homer built Marge a spice rack, and there was no right angles to this spice rack, and there was nothing plumb, and there was nothing square, but because Homer built it, Marge loved it. I'm more of a Homer Simpson type carpenter. I can build something that will serve a purpose. It just may not be pretty.
I think that's the kind of carpenter I am. I built my mother-in-law a picnic bench one time, and it lasted forever. I had that thing well put together. I mean, too many screws, too many nails, but it was kind of warped. I'm the kind of I don't know how to read plans. I just get me a board and start cutting. And if that one, I waste a lot of lumber when I try to take on a project, 'cause I just go to cutting.
Well,
and usually end up with something lopsided, but I'm really proud of it.
Well, and that's the main thing, is that the end result is something that you can say, well, this will work.
You're working on a house now, I understand? You have a
no, we a number of years ago, when we lived at Nokomis, we had some property down there, and we moved into town because we found a house that suited our needs for less than what we could have built for. And now we have more house than what we actually need, since we don't have any children at home. And we've got property at Nokomis that we've just decided that, hey, that's probably where we need to try to live. And
you lived in Nokomis at an earlier time?
Yes, sir.
At this same location?
Yeah, yes, sir. We've been in town for 25 years. So, but we just decided that we wanted to try to get back out a little further outside of town, and since we had the property, there was no sense in it just sitting vacant. And what I'm trying to do is, it has sat idle for so many years that, it's growed up a lot. And so I'm trying to clean up and, make it to where the property will be more presentable, if you will, whenever we decide to start trying to live back down there again.
Mm-hmm.
So that has occupied me a good bit since, before Christmas. But that's kind of where we're at.
Phil, let's talk about an area that I'm more familiar with you. We go to church together, don't we?
Yes, sir.
And Phil, I know he spends a lot of time. He's in our priesthood elders quorum, a counselor, and he stays busy doing good deeds. You and I recently took a little trip together over to Louisiana for the storm cleanup, and
Yes, sir.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Well,
I enjoyed it.
maybe I exaggerate.
No, I enjoyed it.
And Phil does a lot of good deeds and that sort of thing. you were born into the LDS Church, the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You were born into that faith, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess is that a cultural thing for you, or is it I mean, I know it's a cultural thing. Mormons have their own culture, like Mennonites or Catholics or other religions. There's a certain culture sometimes to religion. Your parents were LDS?
Yes, sir. My dad converted. My mom, to my knowledge, mom was always a member, or either that or she converted at a very early age.
Born into an LDS
Yes,
family.
sir.
Yeah.
But my dad, he was a convert. And he converted after he came back from the war, and I don't know what the time frame was, but mom and dad were both members of the church when I was born. So
that was back in the early days in this region of the country. Mormon missionaries would come down here, mostly from Utah,
yes, sir.
where the headquarters of the church were, and they would board or they would walk. They didn't have cars in those days, and one of your distant relatives was out there plowing a mule. Can't remember his name. You might.
No.
Anyway, they were walking along and came up on him plowing his mule, and he pulled the mule over and took a break and was converted to the faith. And that was many years ago, one of those early stalwart families. And over the years, my family converted to that faith in 1961. At that time, we didn't have any building. We met upstairs in the old American Legion Hall. It was just a big old room. And since then, we've made some progress. Not a lot, but we're still a small congregation. But that's sort of where you and I share some camaraderie through the years. It's through the church.
Yes, sir.
And we've had some wonderful experiences just serving others, as all the churches do. I think it's a wonderful thing with these storm damages and everything. We try to do what we can, and it's been a wonderful organization for us. Do you have any comment as far as your upbringing, how it's influenced you as an individual or a human being?
Well, I think that my faith has kept me on the right track, if you will. And, for a number of years I was inactive from the church. It wasn't because of any worthiness issue or any other, didn't have hard feelings with people or anything. For whatever reason, I just decided that, hey, I'm not going to church. And I stayed on the sidelines for a number of years. But, it's not like I had attended other churches. People would invite me, hey, we're having homecoming. Would you come to church? Yeah, I'll come to church with you. I never turned down an invitation to go to church with people. But I never had a desire to have a membership in any other church other than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And whenever I made the decision that, hey, you're going to come back to church, I had attended sporadically. And the thought just occurred to me, you either need to believe what you believe and act on it, or you need to just disassociate yourself from it. And so I decided, well, I'm going to believe what I believe. And one of the very first and most profound experiences that I have ever had in the church, one of the most spiritual things, was whenever President Russell M. Nelson, after he became the prophet of the church in January of 17 or 18, in the April conference, whenever he addressed the conference, as I was sitting there watching and listening to President Nelson, I've never had anything hit me as hard, but I knew that the Spirit was telling me that you are listening to a prophet of God. And ever since then, I've decided that, you're going to do what God would ask you to do. And when you think about the Savior and his life, his entire life was a life of service, serving others. And, we focus on the miracles and all the wonderful things that the Savior was able to do. And in my estimation, the reason he did those things was to manifest to the people of that time that I am who I say I am. I am the Son of the Father. I'm the Son of God. I have the authority that he has given me to do this, and this is why I'm able to do these miracles. But the miracles in and of themselves, to me, were kind of a sideline to the fact that his whole life was a life of serving others, to bring them to the knowledge that, hey, you are a son or a daughter of God. There is hope for you beyond the fall of Adam, if you will. Through me, you will be able to receive a remission of your sins and return to the presence of our Father in heaven. And ever since I heard President Nelson at his first conference address as the prophet, that has stuck with me. And so when the opportunity comes to serve others in whatever capacity, the reason that it's not terribly difficult to do that is because how good you feel whenever when it's over with.
Makes you feel good.
It seriously does. And whenever you and I were able to go in August to Gonzales, Louisiana, to work over there and help with the storm restoration, I don't know about you, and I guess maybe I should have discussed it with you, but on our trip home, I felt like, you've really done something that was worthwhile. You've, in an indirect type way, helped the people here who are suffering because of hurricane damage. So anytime that you can serve others, you're doing what the Savior would have you to do. And, in the Book of Mormon, King Benjamin, one of the prophets, made the comment, when you're in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God. So, there's a lot of good in this world. People want to focus on all the bad, the evil, this, that, and the other. But there's an awful lot of good in this world, and all that it takes to make that good better is for people who are good-hearted to open themselves up and to share and to serve others.
Phil, you're a philosophical kind of guy, so I'm sure you have a thought on this. And it's not just in our church where people are indoctrinated, I would say, or grow up, and their culture, that's kind of who they are. It kind of defines who they are. But as you get older, I don't know, maybe 20s, maybe 30s, maybe even older, there comes a time sometimes when people begin to question their faith. Whether you're a Baptist or a Catholic or whatever, this happens in all religions, I'm sure, that we begin to encounter a part of our lives that causes us to question. Maybe it's a tragedy. It could be anything, but typically a tragedy would be that, a bad experience. And we drift away. We just drift away, and we find ourselves within a period of years. It happened to me, and it happened to you, and it's happened to a lot of people, regardless of what church they attend. Why do people do this? I mean, we know the joy that comes from serving others and from following God and being a good guy. It's a lot more pleasant to be a good guy than it is to be a bad guy. Why do we do that? Why are we so stubborn and obstinate in wanting to go off on our own?
I think it's because we get full of ourselves, if you will. We think that we maybe
Ego?
know more about us. We know more about ourselves than God does. But,
I've thought that before.
He created us. There's nothing about us that he does not know. But because he loves us, he's going to let us figure these things out for ourselves. He's not going to compel anybody to worship him or to obey him or anything. It has to be a choice that we all make. And I think sometimes, the devil's always kind of sitting on your shoulder whenever you're thinking about, getting up. You get up on Sunday morning, you're getting ready to get dressed. There's a devil on your shoulder saying, man, just go ahead and go back to bed. Or
go to the fishing hole.
Yeah, go fishing or turn TV on. Go do, there's always that temptation that's there to not do something that the Lord would have us to do. And I think sometimes we just, in my case anyway, I just got up one Sunday and I said, I'm not going to church. And after you do it that first time, it just gets easier and easier to not do it anymore.
What about hypocrisy? A lot of people use that. It's really an excuse. Oh, there are so many hypocrites in church. Well, there are, really, aren't there?
There are.
I mean, nobody's perfect, so nobody's doing everything they're supposed to be doing. So in a way, we could each be called a hypocrite, as we don't do everything we're supposed to be doing. But I kind of look at it like, well, at least I'm trying, or at least you're trying. And that's better off than not trying. Trying is better than not trying. And so, this idea of going what we call in our church inactive, it's not called, nobody's ever really gone. Some are, but most are just inactive. They haven't really made up their mind right now. They've encountered an obstacle or something. How can a person get back on track?
Well, it's a personal decision. All through the years that I was not in church, I remained in contact with people. When people from the church would call or come by or whatever, hey, come on in, man. I'd be glad to talk to you. But I was not ready myself to make a change, and people have to make that decision for themselves. I'm ready to change something about my behavior that would allow me to get back into church and to start trying to do what the Lord would have me to do. And until you're ready to make that change, there's no amount of loving, tender care, ministering, however you want to, no amount of church visits or church calls or anything that will change what you're doing or not doing. You have to make the personal decision that, I'm going to go back to church because that's where the Lord wants me. And, all God wants you to do is obey His commandments. And the reason it has been easier for me to stay active, if you will, has been because, the Lord says you need to read your scriptures. You need to pray. And whenever I made the decision I'm going to read my scriptures every single day. I'm going to say my prayers every single day. The feeling that I get, I've never gotten anywhere else with any other activity. And I attributed that to the Lord's blessing me for being obedient. Now, I may not read my scriptures very long. I may just, read one page of something and, lay it down. And my prayers sometimes are maybe not as sincere as they need to be. But I'm trying to do what the Lord has asked me to do, and I recognize the fact that I have been blessed because of that, because there's no other way to describe some of the things that have happened to me other than a blessing from God.
Phil, we're out of time. I appreciate you coming on, talking with me. We've had one of our normally excellent conversations. Phil Mack, an interesting person, doing some interesting things with his life, and we appreciate Phil Mack as a citizen of Atmore and one of the good guys.
Well, I appreciate that compliment.
Thanks for coming by, Phil.
You're very welcome.
We love you, buddy.
Thanks for listening to the Lloyd and Friends Show with Lloyd Overton.